how and when did you first get involved with cannabis?
Really, it was because my father found cannabis when he was 30. We started getting exposed to it in the early 70s as, his sons. Um, and from that point on, it was just part of our family's existence. My father became a very well-known cannabis freedom fighter and activist, and then author. Um, and we as a family went along on that ride, from making paraphernalia for, smoke shops back in the 70s and 80s to owning the smoke shops to, you know, registering voters to vote and getting signatures on petitions to legalize cannabis since we were old enough to be legally able to collect those signatures.
Mm.
So from a young adult, 18 years old, up through, the the mid aughts, as many uh, many forms of potential legalization offers came across the balloting side of cannabis in the United States, and especially here in California for us, we were a part of it.
Mm. Yeah, man. Uh, so I guess literally, my next question here, for a lot of people that I speak, in fact, every guest I think that I've spoken to thus far, their story is almost they discover cannabis in secret and they have to hide it from their parents. So what was it like? Like, I'm not saying was Jack kind of like throwing joints at you, like what kind of, or were you all kind of aware of his? Because anyone that saw him speak or sees any clip or reads any of his work can attest to the passion of the man. Um, so I'm just kind of wondering, what was it like sort of behind closed doors? Were you all kind of aware that were you on board automatically, or was it just that's what this house, we're a cannabis house.
Well, we didn't have any real, overwhelming preconception, as young kids, when my dad discovered cannabis in 1969, but I didn't really become aware of my father's interactions with the plant until like 1971, 72.
Mm.
And it was shortly after that, my brothers and I, um, we started, making certain accessories for, head shops back in the 70s, which continued on for, nearly 20 years. And it just seemed normal. So there wasn't any transition. Once we started understanding what cannabis was, we became very popular with our friends. But even then, it was, we socially, outside of our circles, we weren't outwardly cannabis, the way that we are today.
Mm.
It was still something that, we could have gotten a lot of trouble, as a family back in the 70s and 80s. But that really didn't seem, it was absolutely normal. It
Mm.
was like getting up and making breakfast.
Yeah.
It was not something that he, put joints in front of us, asked if we wanted to smoke. I don't think any one of us really indulged with our dad for many, many years after we had started smoking.
Mm.
And even then we didn't really include him on it. you know, and so we had our experience with discovering cannabis, and as we became mid-teens, we had a more open relationship with our dad with regards to you know uh, smoking, him knowing we were smoking, and even smoking together in our teens.
Mm. No, that's lush. Yeah, you still um obviously you're such an avid activist. Obviously, gained more sort of national attention, sort of later into later 70s, 80s, especially obviously post 85 and the release of The Emperor Wears No Clothes. But it's lush that you still had your own kind of authentic experience, and I can kind of almost imagine you and your brothers smoking it, still hiding it, and even if your dad's Jack Herer, still being like, still our dad, he's not cool. He's not cool enough to smoke with us.
No, it was never that, because there was never something that we felt that we had to hide,
Mm.
because it was so open. There there wasn't any sense of shame.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't any, we shouldn't, discuss, we shouldn't share, we shouldn't experience. There wasn't any of that we really um, had to go through. I think more the stigma was when friends' parents found out that,
Mm.
my father was an activist, or we smoked pot when we were in junior high and high school, that, they would sort of not want their kids to hang out with us because of their perception of what they thought cannabis was.
Yeah.
And I think it was our friends that really continued that charade of, I'm good kids,
Mm-hmm.
when they left their parents' house. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Many of them were, um, I would say, more into drinking alcohol still at 16 and 17 years old back then than they were smoking cannabis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because alcohol seemed to be far easier to get.